Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, teacher.
Good morning.
Good morning, teacher.
Let's hear it. Good morning.
Doing these talks is very interesting because what I'm talking about is impossible to talk about. And I think that many people who try and do this solve that problem by coming up with some kind of a formula or some kind of a platform that they use as the basis or the framework for their presentation, which is very misleading. There's only one thing that was worth talking about. In fact, there's only one thing that's possible to talk about, and that is this that is right here, which you may or may not be used to thinking of as your normalcy, the normalcy of your experience, your life, what have you. But what it actually is what all the fuss in spirituality is about. What this here is, what this here actually is what all the excitement is about, is what all the most sacred and most holy and most impenetrable, impenetrably occult writings of the saints and holy people is about. Nothing other than what this here is, actually. So I came up with a name for what I present. I call it the Yoga of Radiant Presence. The Yoga of Radiant Presence is very simple. Am I speaking loud enough? I know we have the hurricane of the fans. The Yoga of Radiant Presence is actually very simple. I can put the principle of it in very simple terms and basically one or two sentences, which is that what this is here is not what you think it is. By investigation, find out what it actually is, and you will have realized the Yoga of Radiant Presence. And this turns out to be the fabled enlightenment, the fabled liberation, the fabled, all the outrageous stuff that all of this spiritual hyperbole is about, and all these capital letters and all of these pictures of fancy deities and people sitting on thrones bedecked in gold and all that. What that's all about is nothing other than this simple fact of what this that is here is actually is. So yoga is basically very simple. Discover what is actually going on here, and it is not what you're used to thinking it is. It becomes more complicated than that because the nature of what's going on here is itself very, very strange. It's very nonlinear, it's very slippery, it's very infinite, it's very unresolvable, which is contrary to the modes of normal human thought. It's contrary to logic, it's contrary to analytical thinking, it's contrary to the scientific method, it's contrary to all sorts of ways that people ordinarily approach things. And of course, one's natural instinct is to try and approach it in those ways because that's the way we've approached everything. That's what we've been brainwashed in our whole life. So the real impediment in this yoga, in this process of investigation, comes in learning how to do it and learning the modes that this exists in. Because to see it as it actually is, you have to approach it in its own intrinsic modes. You have to be with it the way that it is in order to understand the way that it is. If you try and be with it the way you're used to being with it, all you'll find is your dull normalcy, which may be fine. And if that's fine for you, that's great. You're a lucky person. But for many of us, that's a little less than satisfactory in whatever ways. So, how does one do this? How does one investigate what this is to discover what it actually is? Well, it's actually fairly simple, if subtle. And it turns out you're already doing it. You've always already been doing it. But again, the challenge there is you may not be aware that you've always been doing it. Experience, perception, is a felt presence. This is done spontaneously and effortlessly by consciousness. Right now, your entire field of vision is instantaneously appearing in your field of vision. All the details, all the colors, all the shapes, with absolute precision, with no process, with absolute instantaneous presence. The same with all the other sense fields, of course. The same with whatever you happen to be thinking, the same with what you're feeling, and so on and so forth. So this amazing instantaneous engagement is going on all the time. Now, our human mode is typically to sit and scratch our heads and think about things and try and figure out what is this? And we're trying to analyze it. But this instantaneous, completely holistic engagement occurs spontaneously in real time, always. It can't be stopped. And this very tool is the tool that is used to investigate what this is, this instantaneous felt presence, felt engagement with experience itself. I think that frequently people are used to not appreciating this. I think that frequently the normal human mindset is to take the presence of the raw data of experience, the presence of the experiential field, for granted as just a neutral fact that is just there. And typically they may not even be aware that they're doing it. You may think that, well, the world is just here, and so of course I'm experiencing it, you know. And then typically one may sit back and try and figure out what's going on or what one wants to do, or what have you, all the usual stuff. But this downplaying, this taking for granted of the presence of experience itself is unfortunate, because it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Because in actual fact, that is where the potency is. That is where the possibility of discovery is. And that is where the medium of engagement for discovery takes place, in the felt, irrational, non-verbal, non-conceptual presence of experiencing itself. In one sense, delusion, in the technical spiritual sense of being an unrealized person, being lost, being a crazy person, being lost in not recognizing what is actually happening, consists of identifying with one's conscious mind, consists of identifying with one's imaginary persona that one holds into one's mind oneself to be, with one's conscious process of being able to think and figure things out, with one's ideas and stated platforms about what one's doing and what one's trying to do and the way one's trying to do it. Basically anything you can talk about. So when you see a bunch of people get together and they start, hi, how you doing? What are you up to? Oh, I'm doing this and blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff is conscious mind mode. And none of it is actual, none of it is real, none of it has anything to do with anything of any importance. But typically, of course, people don't realize this. And people try to use that mode for spirituality. Oh, I'm really aspiring, I've been sitting for an hour and a half a day, and I burn my incense and I say my mantra and I this and I that. But if you can talk about it, it has no juice, it has no potency. The only thing that has power is what cannot be said. What has power cannot be conceived of, which of course is all of experience. So this is the trap, the sort of the flypaper in all of this is identifying with one's conscious mind. And of course, this is very much human normalcy. We're all very familiar with this. This is 99.9 whatever percent of humans are probably doing that, functioning, identifying with their conscious mind, and ignoring the fact of their what is not included within that, which is the inconceivably intimate engagement with the full experiential field in real time, which we could call the unconscious. But it is this mode, this non-conceptual, unthinkable mode of experiential engagement that is the medium of yoga, that is the medium of investigation, that is the medium of ultimately discovering what is actually here and the way that it is actually here. Part of the human conceit with identifying with the rational mind is, if you can't figure it out or say it, there's nothing, you don't know about it. It doesn't make any sense. You have to make sense of it. You have to be able to describe it. The mode of inherent presence has an inconceivable intelligence, an inconceivable irrational intelligence. Well, it's about time. Always late.
Trying to sneak in.
Trying to sneak in.
Taking all the money.
So this mode of spontaneous inherent presence, of inherent engagement with experience, has a profound intelligence, an inconceivable intelligence, an inconceivable power, an inconceivable functionality. It is this same intelligence that is running your metabolism right now. It's this same intelligence that is balancing your blood pressure, that's regulating all of the inconceivably complex biochemistry within the metabolism of your cells. All of that is being attended to with absolute precision and artfulness by this very same intelligence that is the intelligence that is perceiving the field of your experience. This you're going to have to listen to the reruns to see what we're talking about, Stan.
I assume it's spiritual.
But it's actually not. That talk is down the block. So this intelligence is not just an abstract intelligence or a theoretical concept. It is in fact the intelligence that's actually doing everything. This very same unconscious irrational intelligence is the actual intelligence that is doing the conscious mind. The conscious mind thinks it's doing itself, which is totally absurd, because how could it? How can you think of thinking? The unconscious intelligence effortlessly does the conscious mind, almost as an afterthought, as a byproduct. But the conscious intelligence is hampered by adherence to semantic systems, adherence to the structure of language, adherence to the ability of conceptualization. To conceive of things, to have a concept, you have to separate something from something else. How do you think of just a whole? To talk about that clock, I need to separate the universe into everything that is that clock and everything that is not that clock. So I've created a division, and in actuality, there's no division. There is just this wholeness. The way reality is structured, all specificities include the whole, which is a very strange nonlinear thing. How do you think of that? Well, you can't think of it. That's the point. That's why the conscious mind slices and dices and pretends this is different from that, pretends the computer is different from my knee, when in actual fact they're one and the same thing. The unconscious intelligence effortlessly understands that, because that is its mode. But the conscious intelligence can't wrap its what do you mean the computer is my knee? The knee's a knee and the computer's a computer. If a computer's a knee, they'd call it a knee, wouldn't they? Them out there who is controlling all the usage of language. So anyway, for most people who are basically addicted to conscious mind modes of engagement with things, the unconscious modes, the inherent unconscious modes, I'm calling them unconscious just as a convenient way to refer to it in terms of with relative to conscious versus unconscious in terms of sort of pop psychological terms. In actuality, it's super conscious. There's nothing unconscious about it at all. But the hyper intelligence of the inherent consciousness transcends all conscious logic, transcends all conscious process, transcends all conscious formulas, mathematics and such. And its mode is so alien from the conscious mode that most people are identified that it's hard to go there. It's hard to get there because of the sort of assumed stance that one has to make sense of this stuff in some sense with regard to the conscious mind. I have to figure it out. I have to at least be able to talk about it, you know. And the fact is that it's actually impossible to talk about. I mean, here I am talking, but I'm basically telling lies because everything I say from the point of view of the conscious mind is inaccurate from the point of view of what's actually happening. But as we'll see, inaccuracy doesn't mean uselessness, and inaccuracy doesn't mean ineffectual. And it may be inaccurate, but it is potentially potent, it is potentially useful for the purposes of discovery. Hence all the talking. So, one's faced with the conundrum. Okay, here's the presence of the experiential field. Cool. Okay, I can take it on faith that somehow that's an incredible exercise of intelligence. That's not, even though it feels sort of effortlessly like it's just here, in actual fact, that's being done with incredible, as an incredible show of functionality and competence and power on the part of the inherent intelligence. It effortlessly engages with all of this inconceivable detail in real time and presents it all unbiasedly, presents it all holistically in real time with absolute real time of refresh rate. So it's continually, you know, there's no lag time. It's not like, wait a minute, hold the phone, let me work on this section over here. It hasn't caught up with, it's like, bang, it's just here. It's an incredible show of force. It's an incredible show of power. And I think typically most people just take it for granted. They don't realize it's being done. They don't realize it's an activity. It's just here. It's just here. Yeah, my experience is here. So this is of the essence in this yoga, is coming to appreciate and discover that one is essentially participating in the actual presence of one's experiencing on the most basic level, on the most fundamental level, which enables a shift of identification from the conscious mind, which somehow is this rational, logical, critical, argumentative, you know, spider web of conceptualization floating around here, into the actual nonverbal presence of all of this inconceivable actual information that is present as your experiential field. Now, this is easy because you're already doing it. It's actually very easy because in actual fact you're already doing it. You already are there. So it's not like you need to get there or learn how to do it or figure out or make some great deeper transition to the engagement with presence itself. You're already doing it. But so that's on the plus side. On the minus side, typically people aren't aware that they're doing it because typically we're unlocked into our identification with our conscious mind, and we aren't aware that we're locked in to that identification. We think we just are that. No, I am Peter Brown, you know, and I can rattle off my curriculum vitae and where I live and what my phone number is and what I had for lunch last week and my history and where I grew up and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff, which is all essentially trivial partial bullshit relative to the full field of information presence and information content, which constitutes my actual being. So right away, the conscious mind thinks, well, I'm this sort of disembodied thought bubble, spider web floating around here, and I'm kind of in this body, and then that's me. And then I'm in this world out there, which is just a bunch of weird shit that has nothing to do with me. In actuality, your embodiment is the full field. This is your body, all of it. Your mind is the full field. This is your mind, all of it. So obviously that's a very alien, it's a very different mode from the normal conscious mind mode. The normal human mindset where you're sort of this homunculus automaton with a sort of a semi-functional neurotic consciousness inhabiting it, walking around in this bizarre world that you're basically at the mercy of. In actuality, you're all of it. All of this is your embodiment. Now, another advantage, another ally we have in this orientation that can be of great assistance is the fact that a portion of our experience that we're all very familiar with very, very clearly reveals this orientation. And this portion of our experience is what we call dreams. When you're in a dream, you may be dreaming, and at the time you're lost in the dream, you may be oriented to it very much like you are in the waking state, where you're identifying with a particular body and you're seemingly in a situation which is not you, that you're struggling with or working with in whatever ways it seems to be happening, right? But when you wake up, you look back on it and you go, wow, that was all me. It was just a dream. The entire dream was my embodiment for that period that it was happening. And when the dream stopped, there was basically no embodiment until I woke up, and all of a sudden, this is my embodiment. But then the conscious mind usually kicks in very rapidly. No, this is my embodiment. I'm right here. All of that's just a bunch of weird shit. It has, it's just there. Which interestingly enough is exactly what happens when you're lost in a dream, right? You wake up in a dream and all of a sudden, what's going on? Oh, here I am. Oh, look, I'm walking down the street. Look, there's someone walking up to me. Whatever, right? Same thing happens when you wake up in the morning. But the interesting thing is that when you're awake and you look back on a dream, you can see clearly, wait a minute, there was nothing there. There was no world there. That was all me. Every single thing I saw there, I was putting there for the convenience of my own projection, for the convenience of my own process, whatever that is. And in actual fact, precisely the same thing's happening here. So that, which people typically aren't used to thinking, I suppose. So this gives us, so right away, this is a potent tool that one can use in one's arsenal for gearing up for exploring this stuff. Because you have that reference of being in a seemingly complex, seemingly objective experiential field that is in fact clearly seen to be all yourself. And so in the waking world, then it may be very difficult to relate to in the same mode, except theoretically, it's like, okay, yeah, he says that this is all me. It's like, okay, I can like sort of postulate that or take it on faith, or that's an interesting notion. But with a dream, with the actual experiential fact of having been in so many dreams and having the frame of reference of one's actual orientation to that, there can be a kind of a bridge to seeing the way in which this is the same situation going on here. So the full field of your experience is your embodiment, is actually your body. This is my body, but so is all of this. It's just different degrees of orientation. It presents as a very complex orientation within itself. Why? Who knows? That's just the way it works. Why is it structured the way it is? Why does it have this complex? Why is there a gravitational field? Why is there an earth and a sky? Why is there, a sun? Why is there light? Why is there a solar system? Why is there a galaxy? Why is there the laws of physics? Well, those are all very interesting questions. But you're asking the same question, which is, why is this oriented the way it is? And the best you're going to be able to do is, it is its nature to be that way. It's its nature to present that way. Why am I a human being? Why am I not an ant? You know, why am I not an amoeba? Why am I not a cloud? You know, well, that question, there's no answer for it. It's the nature of what I am that it spontaneously presents that way. So that becomes the vehicle for investigating what it is, rather than thinking that it should be some other way. I shouldn't be a human being. If I'm everything, I should be, you know, an old man sitting in the clouds on a throne with angels kissing my butt. You know, why? Why not? Who knows? Who says? That was crude. I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from.
That was for me.
It was Dan's fault. I'm so glad you came, Stan. We always need a scapegoat. So, it's mysteriously intrinsic in the nature of what this is, that it works the way it works, that it does what it does. But that's not an impediment. It doesn't, that it happens to look like this is irrelevant, because the interesting fact is that you are fully engaged with it. What is that you're engaged with? What is that is engaged? How is it engaged? How are you experiencing your experiential field? What is your experiential field that you're experiencing? Where is it? Where are you with regards to it? And again, the dream comes to us as an ally. When you're dreaming, where is the dream? When you're dreaming, where are you? You know, you're not outside the dream, and yet, strangely and paradoxically, you're not actually inside the dream either. But you're not inside it. Spatial orientation has nothing to do with it. Where is the dream happening? Again, it's a meaningless question, because there is nowhere. The dream creates the where. There's no a priori space existing that the dream happens within. It's not like there's a stage set up and then the dream unfolds itself on the stage. The dream creates its own space. It bootstraps itself up as out of essentially nothing. And so here's your experiential field. Where is it? Where is it? Where's this? All of this space? I mean, look at all this space. You know, the whole universe is here. All this space is actually here. When you go to sleep, where's the space go? Where does the waking world go when you go to sleep? Poof. Where's all this space gone? Poof. And when you're dreaming, there's all this space there, right? Maybe. Suppose you're dreaming you're on the rim of the Grand Canyon, you know, having a great adventure or something, or getting in a fight with your wife or who knows what, or husband, in this case maybe. And so there's all of this space, and Grand Canyon's looming large, and you're dreaming and having this wonderful adventure. And then all of a sudden, you know, the phone rings and you wake up. Where'd all that space go as soon as you wake up? It just poof. Where was it? So when you wake up, it's not there. It was never there. It seemed to be there, but there was no space there. And even when you're in it, it's not really there. Even when you're in the space, it seems to be a space. It presents as if it was a space, but there's no space. There's no more space when you're dreaming than there is when the dream stops. And yet it looks as if there is, maybe. Maybe you're dreaming that you're stuck in a coffin under the earth, so the space may seem to be very small. Or maybe you're dreaming you're floating in the middle of the galaxy, so the space may seem to be inconceivably, I mean, who knows, right? Whatever. So space, it turns out, is, space is not in space. Space is not a quality of space. Space is just something that can seem to show up that doesn't really hold water, that doesn't really have any objective existence. You know, and the same applies to all sorts of other experiential qualities when you begin to look for them. Light's a good one. Where's all this light coming from? Well, the lights are on, the sun's shining, you know, of course, it's obvious where it's coming from. Then you go to sleep and you start dreaming. Where's the light in your dream coming from? Are the lights on? Is the sun shining? Well, yeah, sure, the sun's shining. Look, it's right over there. And then you wake up and the sun that was right over there, where is it when you wake up? It's just gone. When you go to sleep, where is this sun? It's just gone. It's just not there. Suppose you go to sleep, You don't know that the sun was ever there as soon as you go to sleep. It's not like you remembered you were just awake. You're gone, right? Suppose you drop dead. Where's the sun then? It's not like it's there waiting for you. It's there when your experience puts it there. And when your experience isn't putting it there, it's nowhere. Just like the sun you dreamed about. If you see a sun in your dreams, it's there because your experience is putting it there. You all are here because my experience is putting you here. You know, when I go to sleep at night, you're gone. You don't exist. You're poof. You're nothing. You know? If I have a stroke now all of a sudden and just completely, I'm gone. Where are you? You're gone. You don't exist in my universe. You know? So this brings up another interesting issue that the dream analogy indicates quite nicely. You live in your own universe, right? When you're dreaming, you might be dreaming you're interacting with a whole. You may be dreaming you're giving a talk to 1,000 people, and they're all there, and it's a very earnest engagement, and they're all very detailed and very, you know, and some of them are arguing with you, and some of them are agreeing, and everyone's having a great time or whatever. And then you wake up. Where are all those people when you wake up? You know, they're just not there. Were they ever there? They looked as if they were there, but you're the only one that was ever actually in that dream, right? When you're dreaming, you're the only one that's there. You're the only inhabitant of that dream, right? Guess what? Same thing's happening right here. Now that's very contrary to the conscious mind's mode of thought, isn't it? The conscious mind mode of thought is, no, I'm in this little body in the objective world. I'm dependent on the objective world. I come from the objective world, you know, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I come from the objective world. I'm going to go to the objective world. So I'm this little partialized thing, this little wart on the biosphere, you know, that is this little separate dependent thing, and all this tons and myriads of stuff out there that I have to sort out and figure out how to keep it from pissing me off so much that it causes me pain or kills me or something, right? I mean, that's a typical rational mindset, or to caricaturize it, am I wrong? And yet the actuality is, you're putting all this stuff here. You're putting the world here. You're putting the people here. You're putting all of that stuff there. Which is not to say that they don't exist. It's not to say that you don't exist. You may well exist. But if you do exist, you're the sole inhabitant of your own universe. And if I'm appearing in that universe, you're putting me there. You're putting me there. How can that work? How can all of that interlock so precisely? Screw it. Who cares? The simple fact is that it does. You know, but it's a mistake to look at that and then develop all sorts of theories of an objective world and this and that and the other, which there's no basis for. It's just pie in the sky. What's your evidence that the objective world exists? Your experience, right? Look at that. It's a little circular, isn't it? Suppose a little baby is born, and suppose it's like, you know, 2 days old. What do you think it thinks of the world? What world? It's just this field of awareness, this field of present experience that is it. That is manifestly it. But then if you follow the history for, you know, a few weeks and months and years and decades and a lifetime, there's this heavy-handed indoctrination and brainwashing from mommy and daddy and society and everything of, no, you're little Peter and I'm mommy and this is daddy, and look, that's the world out there. Look, there's a car and there's this and there's that, and all of a sudden you're populating your experiential field with all these separate entities that all of a sudden have names and have qualities. All of this differentiation and qualification exists solely in your imagination, because the concrete actuality, as always, is nothing other than the full field presence of your experiential field, which it was from day one. It was when you're coming out the birth canal, and it still is no more or no less than that right now as we sit here. And yet you're able to look at it now and analyze it and see, no, I'm sitting, you know, we're in Culver City and we're in Helen's house and I'm sitting over there and you're sitting over there and we're talking about this and what is this guy going on and on about. And so on and so forth. You're able to think all of that stuff when the only thing that's actually present is the holistic fact of your experiential field appearing in real time, right? And so this is kind of the challenge with this investigation, is the way that humans ordinarily approach this is so wrong. There's nothing right about it. Human thought, human conceptualization, human normal worldview, frame of reference, has absolutely nothing right. Zero right. With very, very, very few exceptions. Existence is good. Okay, yeah. Existence is. Being is. Okay, that's all right. I am is okay until I start qualifying what I mean by I. But in fact, I am is true if you look at what it really means. I am really means this is, because this is me. You know, my presence is the presence of the experiential field, the soul experiential field, which I experience, period. And of course, the same, if you exist, the same may be true for you, but that's your problem. My problem is the only one that exists, which is this one over here, so to speak. Now, this is a perspective that's not often presented in normal human context. You don't usually run across a point of view like this, or an overview in terms of what's going on here. In most things that people say or write or talk about or present in movies or whatever, usually there's the good guys and there's the bad guys, and the handsome hero is trying to get the girl, and trying to make money or have world peace or steal billions of dollars from the 99% or whatever it is that your particular theme is. But it's all engaged with all of this complex gamesmanship of humans pitted against other humans, humans pitted against the environment pitted against humans, and all of this complex interrelationship. And that it's all you. How often do you hear that? Wait a minute, this is all me. There's nothing here but me. Absolutely nothing here but me. That's the literal truth. That is the simple, literal, specific truth. And if you exist, the same is true of you. You exist, and that's the sole fact. So this is both the starting point and the end point of this yoga. The starting point is to somehow get your foot in the door of feeling this holistic presence of your actuality, of your experiential presence, feeling its actuality, and noticing the fact that the feeling of it is what you are. You're not something over here that's feeling some experiential field over here. You can't find a you separate from this feeling of the experiential field. And you can't find the feeling of the experiential field separate from you. You are this. This is you. And this becomes very obvious when you just feel it. You look at it and feel it. It's not, it doesn't take, wait a minute, let me figure this out. How's that work? There's nothing to figure out. It's completely obvious. It's completely self-evident. Where is this being felt? Here. Where is what's feeling it? Here. Can I find a what's feeling it separate from it that is somehow, there's this and there's this and there's that, and they're like somehow like, mushed up against each other. There's no this and that. It's just this. Its presence is the feeling of it. The feeling of it is its presence, and it's all inconceivably conscious. It's all inconceivably intelligent. By intelligent, I mean inconceivable intricacy of apparent structure can seem to be present. That's what I mean by intelligence. Intelligence is functional intricacy. Functional intricacy. Functional intricacy. Say that backwards 10 times. Functional intricacy. Try and say it forward once. So there's a good definition of this inherent intelligence. look at the inconceivable detail of your experiential field. All of this amazing color and light and sound and thought and sensation and all of this. You don't need to sit there and sort it out and say, wait a minute, slow down, too much, let me sort this out. It's pre-sorted. It shows up as this inconceivable readout, this inconceivable spread of, literally infinitely diversified information. How is that happening? I mean, this is an incredible show of power, of intelligence. Just the information density of the experiential field. And what it is that intelligence. What you are, which is one and the same with what it is that intelligence. It's not a reflective intelligence. It's not an intelligence that is, modeling it and looking at it from over here and saying, wait a minute, hold the phone, let me see if I can get a handle on this. It has a handle just in the presence. It intrinsically is that. So, and so coming to notice that this is the case, coming to notice and appreciate this irrational, nonlinear, non-process oriented mode of intelligence is coming to discover one's own intelligence. It's coming to move into and be empowered by one's true nature, one's true potency, one's true omnipresence, as it actually is. And it exists in its mode in the way that it is. So you have to go to it. You can't expect to make sense of it and drag it into the conscious mind. You can't expect to, well, let me study this and then I'll write my book and then I'll be rich. I'll have all of these throngs of followers coming to my talks and paying $1,000 a weekend. Where?
Let's stand right there.
Yeah, I know, right? Ghostwriters. Hungry ghostwriters. So anyway, so I've been trying to flirt around with different aspects of what this is about, of what is going on here. To simplify, or to go back to the beginning, the process of this investigation is not one of learning to do something. It's one of noticing and recognizing what you've already always been doing. Notice and recognize and appreciate that you have always been spontaneously engaged with your experiential field with inconceivable precision and potency, with zero effort. So come to appreciate this present intelligence. And this intelligence has its own modes. This intelligence has its modes of knowing. It has its modes of assimilation. It has its modes of logic. It is much, 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 as many muches as you want, smarter than you're used to thinking you are. So as you move into appreciating, move into recognizing this inherent mode of intelligence that you actually consist of, you get to partake of this intelligence. You get to enjoy it. You get to appreciate and participate in its modes of functionality. So this discovery can feel like a huge empowerment, because all of a sudden you're freed from process. You can enter into spontaneity. You can enter into genius. You can enter into insight. You can enter into drawing random, profound correlations in very nonlinear modes, because its mode is not a logical mode. It is not a rational mode. It's not dependent on process. It can just go right to knowing. It can go right to certainty. It can go right to seeing, because that's its mode. Its mode is seeing. That's your seeing that you're seeing right now is it's seeing. And it's not just a non-entity. It's an incredible exercise of power and competency. Competence. Anyone have a dictionary? Let's see, what have I left out? Stan, what have I left out? Why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we can chat a bit, if you'd like. Today's going to be a long day, so we can pace ourselves and relax and have some fun.
Oh, I'm in good shape.
You're in
Oh,
good shape,
you want
girl.
cold water? No, just any old water, but I don't bring it. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
How are you?
Well, just real quickly, I have a very rare cancer called chordoma, one in another.
Wow, lucky you.
Had it taken out directly from my spinal cord and ate away my vertebrae.
Wow.
Surgery, 40 proton radiation treatments.
Wow.
Getting into my second surgery because one of the screws came out of the rods and was messing with nerves. And these rods separated. I can show you pictures worth 1,000 words.
Really cool. That's something that.
Yeah.
That's the vertebrae that are left because the rods separated and the skin stretched out.
You know, you're
So, I'm level grade.
It's very exciting. It's really exciting when the shit hits the fan in a way, isn't it?
Well, I thought of you a lot because all of the pain relievers made me extremely ill.
Oh, man.
And so
I know what you mean.
weeks post in a brace from year to year, sleeping in it with muscle spasms and no pain relief because I couldn't take pain relief. And you had talked about, you didn't talk about why you stopped. You just said at some point you stopped, you were not taking pain relief. So now I'm facing that for a second time. So that's the small me gets pretty dizzy.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's his job.
And then oh, sure. So that's how I am.
Exciting.
So it does shake everything out. And I will tell you, one of the nights of the race, the pain was way beyond my endurance. I mean, it was I did let go. It proved to be a order. I don't know what word to use except to say it was okay. And somehow there was all of this beyond the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
And it went on and on. And
Yes.
I didn't get that. I wasn't gifted with that.
Yes. That don't undervalue that. That's the essence. That's the real point right there. Because that portal is always open. That's the open doorway that's always right here. And you're never stuck in anything because you're always in that. No matter what it looks like, you're not actually in it. It is true. It's the most wonderful truth.
And you choose the price. And they'll print on
Well, I had thought
So anyways, there's some work to it.
contacting,
I never get the time.
but somehow the process itself is so intense. It's doing me. And I'm just like doing it. And, you know, I didn't even know there was nothing in it other than flickers of maybe it would be helpful to contact Peter, but that would just go. And then it was just like, you gotta do this, whatever this is. It was just not an iota of energy, zero.
Yeah.
Left.
Yeah. And you don't need anything more than this, what's present. Whatever it is your pathway. You don't have, it's not like you have a choice.
Well, that's exactly.
So you're going through it.
That's exactly. And you talked about that. Obviously, sometimes in your own process. And whoa, is that true?
Yeah, it's really true.
I mean, the word surrender, surrender,
It's trivial.
but then it isn't trivial in the sense that this is when it's so big, there's nothing else.
Yeah. And it always really is,
It always
even if you're not noticing.
Right. It's like pain seems to be
Yeah, it's a reality check. It's like, okay, time to get real. Let's take some stock here.
And complete mental disorientation.
Yeah.
I couldn't even make sense.
Yeah.
I was gone for quite a while.
Yeah.
11.5 hours of anesthesia. I'm a little person. So,
Yeah, which is a good thing.
which is,
Because then you see, I don't really need all that shit. Who cares? It comes and it goes, and sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not.
yeah. I didn't experience it as totally good because I was having such trouble functioning in the ways I needed to function.
Yeah, sure.
You know, like.
But when you can't, you can't. And tough shit, what do you,
Yeah.
that's how it
No,
is.
well, I mean, like, in terms of calling doctors.
Yeah, no, for sure.
These practical kinds of things.
No, of course.
Yeah. It's all. This is what bothers me.
But anyway, yeah.
But here you are. The magic works. And the result of the magic is always here you are.
So anyway, I am actually great.
You are. That's wonderful. I'm so glad. Well, I mean, in spite of what might be said to be the horrific nature of what you've gone through, I'm really very happy for you, I have to say.
I need to say that. Because I am too.
Well, of course, because you get it. I mean, that's the point. That's wonderful. It is. That's the point. I mean, it's big and it's real. And in the end, it's all you have.
Nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. And that's outside. I mean, period. No more words.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
that's
do.
great. I mean, just
It's one of my main areas of self-indulgence.
pushing on the nerves.
This is a stevia.
If I
I had cancer in my mouth a while back and damaged my taste buds. I can't taste sweet very well, and as a result, I tend to use what most people would consider way too much sweetener in my.
No, I'm really good. I'm pushing my buttons.
Oh, I love it.
My favorite thing is feedback is the right.
In the group here.
Oh, yeah.
In the back.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. We can get back together anytime, if you like or not.
I had exactly the same thing.
Between the railroad crossings.
I was flashing back and forth, right?
Except that we're not in the first thing, exactly.
I know. It is.
And Alabama. Our current experience.
Are we mostly back?
Mostly.
So anyway, everything I've spoken about this morning is just looking at this from a certain perspective. There's infinite perspectives that this can be looked at from that are all equally valuable, and none of them are absolutely true, which is part of the conundrum of how to address this stuff and how to present it. The most important factor in all of this is in terms of you, if you're interested in sincerely exploring this stuff, is what is it in the actuality of this for you? The theory of it and the talking of it and the pie in the sky writing books about it is of absolutely no use. The whole point is, what is your experience, and in what way is your experience an impediment to you? In what way is your experience an ally to you? And learning to take advantage of the inherent potency and the inherent nature of what your experience actually is in order to empower yourself, to free yourself from imaginary limitation which doesn't exist. Having said that, I'll open the, yes, Stan.
Well, there's a couple related things. You were talking about how you were talking a lot about dream and how that is a great sort of a metaphor, or a very real metaphor for how we are in waking as well. But that's in terms of direct raw experience, that's sort of dream-like also. But on top of that, our normal affliction, which you very clearly stated about how it's 100% the other direction from what's really going on, is that we have this interpretive thing, which is also a major dream. And if you don't know that the interpretation, if you don't catch it, if you don't notice that it's a dream as well, you are the entry into the appreciation of what's already here. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's one. And the second thing is that we're kind of more, like you say, you're not here very often anymore, and we're sort of on our own. And it seems to me that I'm kind of working that one out. Actually, I can't work it out, but it's sort of like, it seems that I'm doing yoga because I'm getting old and stiff, but it's actually very helpful for breaking mental things.
Well, if you're old and you're still getting stiff, that's a good thing. Oh, sorry. That's another topic.
But it seems that good company is kind of important in terms of, because it's a hypnosis. Well, it's a culture of hypnosis.
Yeah. And your first point, which is implied in that, and we haven't really addressed it very specifically this morning as yet. And it's important to understand that the conscious mind is not the enemy. The conscious modes, or rational modes, or modes of thought is not actually a problem or an enemy. It doesn't need to be suppressed. It doesn't need to be stopped. It's like, oh my God, my conscious mind is so diluted. I need to stop it or put a bullet in my brain or something, because that's the problem. The conscious mind does not need to be stopped. It does not need to be fought with. It's actually not the enemy. It just needs to be seen for what it is. The conscious mind is a very, very partial subsystem that exists in the vast expanse of the field of your actual experience. And seen in its actual perspective, it ceases to be a problem. And the fact that it's continually chattering away and churning out these analyses, most of you have heard me say this because I've said it down here many times, but it bears repeating because it's a delightful analogy. The conscious mind is a lot like the Pentagon. You know that in the Pentagon there's teams of hundreds of people that are busy constructing hypothetical war scenes. And in the Pentagon, they have 100 different plans for invading Dublin. And it's not that they're planning to invade Dublin, but in case they ever need to, they want to say, okay, we're going to plan 23C. Because that's what they do. Because they're like obsessively analyzing, and they have analysts and they're figuring out all this stuff and writing down all this stuff. And that's just what the conscious mind does. The conscious mind is, wait a minute, what's going on here? Let me get my bearings. Wait a minute. Maybe these people are my friends, and maybe they're all my enemies, and I have to bullshit them and come up with a really good facade, or maybe be very defensive, or maybe this. And so the conscious mind is running all these analyses, hypothetical analyses of what might be going on, that it sort of stores back in its own files, and it sort of is running maybe one or two dominant ones at a time. Okay, I feel comfortable now. You all are my friends. There's no enemies here. Oh my God, these people are all a bunch of crazed bikers that are gonna, I don't know what. I better be on my guard. And so basically, it generates all these hypothetical scenarios, these templates for what might be going on, and doing that is not a problem. The problem is when you naively assume that these analyses, these templates are accurate. And that's when you're a crazy person. That's when you're in delusion in terms of spiritual, technical terminology. But that the conscious mind is doing that is not a problem at all. It's simply seeing that it is just hypothetical. So the conscious mind is doing all this. Maybe this is a computer, maybe this is a recorder, maybe this is T, maybe you are people, maybe I'm here, maybe you really exist, and maybe I'm doing a talk. Maybe I'm dreaming all this. Maybe this is a dream. I'm going to wake up and the talk's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe this, maybe, okay, cool, no problem. So you can just, okay, so there's all of these different hypotheses running around in the context of what? In the context of this actuality, which is entirely undescribable, is neither objective nor subjective. None of the conscious mind's analyses apply, because what it is an absolute transcendental, mysterious actuality. And so when you see that context, which has always been exactly like that, it's nothing new. The conscious mind has always just been this, this crazy chattery monkeys that are off in this little corner of your experience somewhere. But experience is this vast, actual, inconceivably information-dense presence. And the conscious mind is just a very small, subroutine that's running back in the CPU somewhere. And so when you see that, you get that, oh, the conscious mind isn't the enemy. It's not anything. It's just the conscious mind is a lot like your left hand. It's a whole lot like your left hand. It's there, and you can use it for things when it's appropriate, but it's not particularly important. It's just there, and it doesn't have a lot of impact on what you are, what this is. And likewise with the conscious mind. In the case of a deluded orientation, a typical human orientation, you're using the conscious mind as your sort of overlay to experience everything. So you're looking through the conscious mind to look at the entirety of your experience, in which case the analyses and the theories and the hypotheses of the conscious mind become extremely important and relevant, because, oh my God, maybe this is this, maybe this is that, maybe that's, and it's being sort of knee-jerk fight or flight held as being actual and impactful and important. Whereas in actuality, it's just a little bit of hot air happening way back in the corner somewhere. And that is really not even that hard to see. And when you see that that's the case, through becoming more familiar with the presence of full field experience, which is always right here, and it's always present. It's not like you have to, let me become aware of the present. You're already aware of the presence of your experience. You just feel this vastness, and then the fact that there's little things going on over here is like, who cares? It's like if the neighbors are out in their front yard having a fight or something, Like, yeah, that's happening, but who cares? It's just this tiny little event in this big vastness. So that's in terms of your point one. Your point two, I totally forgot what you said.
Well, in terms of, good company. Let's paraphrase it to that. Because nothing supports seeing, the culture supports
Good company, yeah.
looking through the conscious, templates.
Yeah.
It doesn't support the full field that can, so, and being on your own and stuff like that.
A good stance is to treat humanity as if you're in a psych ward. Pretend you got locked into a psych ward and everyone around you is stone bonkers. And so people come up and they say all kinds of things to you, and they really mean it, and they're really sincere, and it's urgent, and it's important, or it's funny, or it's whatever they think it is. But they're nuts. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. They're totally lost in their own fantasies, which is pretty close to the truth. So simply see that that's the truth, and you don't have to pretend to be one of them. You don't have to insult them either. You don't have to insult them.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, you don't have to say, you're a crazy person. You can think it, but you can still be perfectly polite and whatever, right? Say, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Big political problems, yeah. How about those Republicans, man? How about those 1%? Yeah, boy, sucks, doesn't it? Yeah, but it's all just bullshit. And when you know that, then it's like water off a duck. It just doesn't matter. It's not like, wait a minute, maybe I better worry about the 1%. Maybe I better worry about, politics. Maybe I better worry about the ecosystem. Maybe I better worry about racial inequality. Maybe I better worry. God, if you're worried about everything that crazy people worry about, you're going to go crazy yourself, which of course is what they do. And all of a sudden you're just lost in Facebook. The modern version of hell. You're lost in cute cat movies.
Piggybacking on what Stan said, in this moment, being here, being with you, being with my friend, is so enormous.
Sure.
Because it's one thing to see it all, and yet it just is very comforting to the little being here to be connected.
Sure. Connection is nourishing. Connection is soothing. Connection is fulfilling, and connection is your inherent nature. And when you feel connection, you're just noticing what is already the case. It's not like something is happening that wasn't happening before. And when you're not feeling connection, it's not that the connection is not there. It's just that you've been swept away into some kind of momentary craziness where you're distracted from noticing the connection. Because the actual connection is the connection to being, the connection to actuality, which is, it may sound like, yeah, so what? But it's not, yeah, so what? That is the whole thing. That's everything. There's nothing but that. There's nothing but this. And it's what you are, and it's what this is. And that's the point of all this stuff, is just notice that is always inalienably the case. You don't even need to make it the case. It already is. You couldn't possibly stop it if you wanted to. It can't happen. How do you stop reality? How do you stop being? It can't be done. You are so intrinsically embedded in wholeness and completeness and the final condition, and you have always been and you always will be. And that is beautiful, it's joyful, it's nourishing, it's everything. And noticing that is not the addition of something that wasn't there beforehand. It's just taking a moment to smell the flowers. It's just like, oh yeah, look at that. This is it. This is for real. This is actually it. I am here. I am this. And you are it whether you notice it or not. It's not like, oh, I am this and now I'm claiming it and I'm establishing it. No, you couldn't make it not be that if you wanted to. You couldn't not be God if you wanted to. It couldn't happen. And because you are, that gives you the potential of actually noticing and appreciating and enjoying that fact. You don't have to. You can be lost in craziness like most people seem to do. And even if you're doing that, you're not actually losing anything because you are actually all this. You could not be this. And yet, because you are this, you can take advantage of that fact, let yourself notice it and enjoy it, and enjoy the empowerment and the freedom and the completeness that is intrinsic in this condition.
And just one more thing about that is the intensity of the intimacy of that.
Absolutely, it's intense to the power of intense. It's God to the power of God. It's the real thing. I mean, this is it in capital letters, and it's not like a little afterthought. This really is it. It doesn't get many more intense. It doesn't get any more real. This is reality. It's not like this is just like the little bottom. This is like the little toe of reality, and reality is somewhere over there. And it's really, no, this is it. You're it. Bang. And it's just you can take advantage of the fine print and let yourself notice that and enjoy it fully, or not, and that's cool too. But since you can, if you want to, have at it, and then you get the perks that comes with that noticing. It comes with that appreciation.
Actually, I just answered a question that I brought here with me. The fact that we can't. All the seeking is not something that we can contrive or make a formula or put together. And then I said, well, what's the purpose of a satsang? And you answered it. It's nourishing. It thrives. So that which transcends all the logic I was trying to justify as far as what are satsangs or retreats all about. Anyway, I'm just clarifying that I no longer have the question. It's all part of our human nature.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Seeking is all good, and questioning and striving and investigating is all good.
Mm-hmm.
And seek and you shall find. And yet what you find is what you always have been. So the whole thing is kind of a joke, but that doesn't negate it or cancel it out or make it valueless.
Mm-hmm.
And what else was And no, I'll be right with you. And in a way, what we do here is like going to the end of the book. It's like how in the old school text the answers were all in the end of the book. This is like, well, here's the book of life, and we're all reading it, and we're all where we are on whatever page we are. And it's like, but by the way, you can just like skip ahead and go to the end of the book. And so what we do here is kind of like that. You're peeking at the last pages, and you can jump there if you're capable of, or you can go back to where you were in the book and go along. It's all good. You don't lose anything by doing one thing. You don't get anything by doing another.
Well, sitting here and being reminded of this kind of approach, I have no trouble with it. But when I get back into ordinary life, my experience is that my mind does take over. And I wondered if we have any, I know we don't want to have little things to juice us, but
Sure.
What do we do? Yeah.
Well, there's lots and lots of things. It's in a profound sense, it's about remembering. It's about remembering,
Yeah.
recognizing. And so you can use tricks to remember. And ultimately you have to discover or devise your own. the main thing that's so seductive about ordinary life is we're bombarded by this semantic stream, you know, news and people's conversation and people's behavior and the implications of all of that, which is based on insanity.
Based on what?
Insanity, misinterpretation, the normal human mindset of the way people approach things. And even when that is happening, you're never actually taken out of this other. So it's not like you're actually losing anything. But I hear you. It can be nice to have little tricks to remember it, you know. And so there's a lot of ways to do that. You have to, you know, it's best to find something that works for yourself. You know, some people sit down and meditate for 5 minutes or whatever. And the point of that isn't the meditating or whether you're doing that. The point of that is just taking some time out and saying, wait a minute, let me just sit with the presence of experiential actuality and just feel this. Just outside of any context of interpretation, outside of any context of anything. And then you just feel this, wow, this is really here. You know, or you can, you know, you can look at beauty, look at sunsets, look at flowers. There's no way to make sense of flowers. There's no way to make a story about flowers. They're just there and it's like, wow. And it's all about wow factor. So you find something in your experience that has a wow for you. And just remember to be with that from time to time. And just as a reminder, it's like a way of poking your head out from under all the usual crap into this presence. And when you do that, you'll notice, and yeah, this is always here. Even when I'm not noticing it, it's always here. And you don't need to notice it all the time. The important thing isn't like, oh, I have to be in the full field of my experiential presence all the time. You know, it's like, no. Most of the time you're going to be lost in thought, or you'll be, you know, feeling some emotion and pissed off at somebody, or having an argument, or discussing things with somebody.
So you're saying you accept that?
Of course, because you're not losing anything when that happens, but you know that that's happening. It's a felt sense that that's happening in the context of this fullness. You know, it becomes something you don't need to. You discover that it's there, but you don't need to keep proving it to yourself because it is there. And when you know it's there, then you know it's there, and it's not like you need to keep. Oh yeah, is this the presence of reality? Yeah, this is the presence of reality. It's like, yeah, it's the presence of reality. So then go to a movie or put your feet up or have a drink or whatever it is you enjoy. And it's not like, wait a minute, it's just, oh yeah, it's reality. Okay, good. It's like, oh yeah, it's reality already. You know, and you're free to be with that and to revisit that anytime you want and enjoy it. But it's not like you're losing it when you're off, you know, caught up in something, because that's the nature of what this is an unending slipperiness. It continually slips away from itself into something else, and that slips into something else, and then there's no stability to be found anywhere. There's no constancy. It continually morphs through itself into otherness. Always, right? Look at your experience. You know, every moment you're thinking different thoughts and feeling different feelings and seeing something different. You can't stop that. It's not like, wait a minute, I'm going to just be with this and it's all that's going to be here. Within a second, you're going to drift off into something because that's what it does. But that is it. That is its mode. Its mode is to drift away from itself continually, but it never moves away from itself. It drifts away from itself continually, but it's always completely itself. So it's very, very, very paradoxical. It's when you start thinking, wait a minute, there's that and I'm losing it. You start thinking there's two things. There's it and then there's me and I'm over here and I don't have it. That's not true. You never don't have it. But you're always moving away from it because it always moves away from itself. But even as it moves away from itself, it never goes anywhere. It's always right here. It's endlessly weird. I mean, I remember we haven't really talked about this too explicitly, but I started this morning saying what's going on here is really weird. It's very, very strange. It's not at all like the kinds of conditions that people ordinarily think of. What's happening here is exactly what it is, and it was always presenting as something other than that, without ever becoming other than itself. How weird is that? It's always moving away into something else, and it never actually leaves itself. What does that even mean? It sounds like gibberish, and yet it's literally true. This continually, it's continual. It's like a dream. Where's the dream going? It's just always moving away into something else, but it never goes anywhere. And it's always just a dream. It never becomes anything more than or less than dream. It never departs from itself, but it continually presents as newness. So experience is always new. It's always moving into something else. You know, every instant you're experiencing something you never experienced before. And yet it never becomes anything other than just this experience, just like it has always been. So it's this very, very, very weird paradoxical condition. It's dizzying. A human being can't think of it. You'll go nuts if you try to wrap your head around that. It's totally unthinkable, and yet it's actually like that. So, you know, it's just this weirdness. It's this weird, weird weirdness where difference is sameness. How can difference be sameness? Difference and sameness are opposites. Well, I got news for you. Difference and sameness are not opposites. They're actually the same thing. In reality, in this, in actuality, in what you are, that's literally true. So where did logic go? Where did sanity go? It's like, screw it. Who needs it? It doesn't apply. And all these people say, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Who ever said reality made sense? Whoever said physics made sense? You know, whoever said light made sense. It just is what it is. You look and see what it is, and then you learn what it is. You don't look and see what it is and then argue with it because it doesn't make sense. You recalibrate your idea of what making sense is. You know, making sense has to conform to reality, don't expect reality to conform to making sense, because it ain't going to happen.
Wait a minute, aren't we Republicans?
I speak for yourself, dear. Wait a minute, no, this is no politics or religion, right? Yes.
Okay, so it's all like connection versus like separation. Right?
Sure.
My yoga teacher said that we're all God playing hide and seek with ourselves.
Yes, that's a good image.
Okay, so all right, so is it all sort of about expansion where we are all like just growing out of God, and then sometimes forgetting that we're connected and separating in our efforts to separate and differentiate ourselves? It's like a huge trial and error on the part of God. Like we're for every luminary that separates himself to the point of universality, there are like a million crazies.
You can look at it, right? Yeah. You can look at it like that, except, and that's not a bad way to look at it as a sort of a rough draft, but more precisely, separation and inclusiveness aren't actually opposites. So this projects itself, like you say, playing hide and seek with itself. This projects itself as different from itself and separate from itself to infinite degrees, but it never becomes an actuality. It's always a seeming. It's always like a pretense, like a playing hide and seek. So that's actually a good image. So you can project yourself into infinite degrees of separation and non-inclusiveness, and then struggle with trying to recreate the inclusiveness you imagine you don't have. And that's a game that it plays with itself, for sure. But it's something that it is doing that is showing up as your experience. But the important point is, in any degree of separation that's created is just an image of separation, because real separation is impossible. You can look at the image of a dream again. In a dream, you can imagine anything. You can imagine infinite degrees of objectification and separation, but everything that appears in the dream doesn't depart from dreaming whatsoever, one tiny bit. It's all just dream. It never becomes something you can't, nothing separate can be created, because as soon as it's created, it is creation, and creation is this field that is here.
So it's the point of this gathering and speaking and that kind of thing is to notice that we are not separate and
Yeah.
And
Sure. The point of this is cheating. Cheating. So you may be lost in this whole separation of being you and being in your life and having all of this, but there's like some fine print at the bottom of the, on page 8074 of the contract. If you look at the fine print, there's a fine print down there at the bottom. But by the way, you're not really separate. And so
it's not cheating, it's legal.
Yeah, it's legal. It's legal, but you're short-circuiting the game. It's like saying time out.
Short-circuiting everyone else's game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't have to play if you don't want to. And you can play and not play both at once. You can pretend to be playing and know that you're playing, which is what liberation looks like. When you're liberated, you're playing, but you're not suffering because you're not under the illusion that it matters. You're just playing, and you know you're playing, so it's all a big hoot. And hey, why not? What the hell? Hey, I'm Peter Brown. Who are you? What are you up to? And why not? It's all good. But at that point, there's nothing ventured, nothing lost, because you are God. You know you are God. It's a certainty. It's not an assertion or an aspiration. It's just an experiential, obvious fact. And cool. But hey, I'm Peter Brown. How you doing? What are you up to? So you can be with it any way that you're capable of it. You can cheat. You can play the game and not play the game. You don't have to follow the explicit rules of the game that other players of the game are insisting you have to follow.
Right. Because the rules are our own creation anyway.
Yes.
And we can...
Precisely.
Right.
Just because someone says you have to follow the rules doesn't mean you do.
The final rule is their own rule.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Well put. That's actually a very, very potent and powerful point. It's intrinsic in the nature of things. Because what this is, well, that's really another whole separate topic. It'll come up during the course of our discussion, so we don't need to actually go there now.
It strikes me that one perspective to look at things, everything is in motion. There's simply arising, and kind of awareness arising within itself, and awareness simply arising. And the two traps, and that's a concept too, that there are 2 points of stability. One is separate me, and that I'm noticing the arisings or whatever in awareness.
Yes.
When in truth, the very fact that there's a separate me is simply an arising.
Yeah.
And there is no separate it. There's no separate.
Yeah.
But we let it slip in, and part of it is linguistic. Well, I'm noticing it, I'm noticing that. It's all arising, and whether you notice it or don't notice it is simply it arising. Because
Yes.
even to say it is putting it in separation from something else.
Right.
So everything is simply arising, everything is simply manifesting, everything simply is, period. That's it.
Very well put. And another a corollary of that is there's nothing wrong with saying it arises, even though if you think of that simplistically, that might seem to imply a separation. But if you look at what the words actually refer to, it refers to this that's arising, and the arising refers to this that's the arising. So even though the words may seem to imply some kind of divergence, there's no actual divergence. So the words don't I can say, boy, I'm here talking to you, and I know that you and I are this that is here, but so there's no harm in saying and putting it that way, because it doesn't change the fact. So even though the implication of language is hopelessly inaccurate, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't actually do anything.
And there's no separate me coming up with these.
No.
Anyway, the me arises
Yeah.
along with the thoughts of whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in conjunction with a corollary that there's no separation, and yeah, there's no me. In other words, we're all connected. What about one teacher said there are no rules except one: do no harm. So where does that fit? That would make sense to the idea that we're all connected. But I'm wondering, does do no harm make any sense in where we're at here?
What does harm mean?
Harm,
What would harm mean? How can you know what harm is?
you know what harm is? Well, the traditional 10 Commandments of hurting somebody or killing or stealing or lying, that's not harm.
How can you avoid it?
How can you avoid it?
Sure, how can you avoid it? Suppose you're walking and you step on an ant. You didn't see the ant, you didn't even know it was there.
Right.
Or better yet, suppose you're walking and you're killing billions of germs. They're invisible. I mean, I put my foot down and it's like whole civilizations are destroyed. I'm stretching my legs. But you know what? It's like, what, I'm supposed to levitate? And I'll be hurting these little microbes in the air or something, right? So,
Where you're not, well, that's not from intent.
but what is
What about
intent? What is it?
intent to destroy?
But where does intent come from? When I have an intent, do I intend to have the intent? And if I intend to have the intent, did I intend to have the intent? I mean, at some point, intent just appears, so it's a spontaneous occurrence that I'm not responsible for. Suppose I'm a really nice person, and I have an intention to be polite to people and friendly and not piss people off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so am I doing that? Where does it come from? Where does that nature of mine come from? I have the intent to be a nice person. Okay, cool. Did I intend to have that intent? Did I contrive? Did I say, this morning when I wake up, I'm going to try and be a nice person? It just appears. So if it just appears spontaneously, am I doing it? Or is it just a happenstance that it happens that way? Or let's take the opposite. Let's suppose I'm a real asshole. Let's suppose I pick fights with people and like to get in fights and punch people in the nose and insult people of other races and stuff. Did I decide to do that? Did I decide to be an asshole? Did I go to sleep at night and say, tomorrow I'm going to be a bigoted redneck? You know, that's my life path. I'm going to aspire to that. You know, I've been studying books on being a bigoted redneck, and I think I finally got it down. I think I finally figured out. Right? Is that really what happens? People, no one has a choice. You know, you didn't decide to be a human being. You didn't decide to have your personality. You didn't decide to have your assets. You didn't decide to have your neuroses. They're just there. You know, why was my father an alcoholic? Why did I have, a difficult upbringing? Why did it warp my personality? Did I decide that? Is it my fault? I mean, and if I act out inappropriately because of those facts, it's just a chain of weird circumstance perpetuating itself. And where is their agency in any of that? Where is their responsibility in any of that? I mean, all of this sort of simplistic stuff of do no harm and avoid killing and nonviolence is all very nice, but it's very simplistic kindergarten rules for people that are very unsophisticated and don't think very deeply. When you begin to look at what this actually is and the way it works, it's subtler than that. And those kind of rules are fine. It's a lot like traffic laws. Traffic laws are basically lowest common denominator for stupid people. They're like, okay, there's only one real traffic law, which is behave intelligently and don't get in accidents and don't. That's the real traffic law. But then it's like, no, in this block you're supposed to go 35, and then the next block you can go 40, and the next block you go 25. It's like, that's for stupid people. That's for children. It's like the kindergarten rules. Don't color outside the lines. That's the rule in kindergarten. And when you're an adult, you know that that's just an absurd, arbitrary thing. In fact, you can make a whole art form of deliberately coloring outside the lines. And so you get that those kind of simplistic rules and guidelines are for people who are not particularly evolved. When you get evolved, you start engaging with things more multidimensionally, more where it's not this or that, it's not a simplistic right or wrong, but there's all of these shades of gray. There's a spectrum of infinite values that can coexist, and they aren't actually even contradictory to each other. You know, you can be a little mean and actually be being a little nice. You can be a little nice and actually be being a little mean. You can be a little helpful and actually being an obstructionist. You can be an obstructionist and actually be being helpful. You know, things are complex, things are subtle, things are multidimensional, and this kind of simplistic thinking is for naive, you know, mindsets, which is fine. And if one happens to be functioning dominantly from that point of from that degree of mindset, there's no problem, and that's all very useful. But there's other modes that are available.
I want to go back to what I first asked you talking, and we were speaking about interpretation. It's actually a relatively easy thing to kind of see through, and it becomes just this little thing on the side as opposed to the full field. For me, that's actually becoming lucid in the daydream is what liberation is. I mean, that's, but to me, it's a whole shooting match.
Sure, it's a good way to put it.
And when I'm having a hard time describing this. When when I go lucid, then I realize that the interpretations is, you know, it's nothing. I mean, it's really insignificant. And it's a joke. When I'm caught in it, or not, when it's running and I'm not lucid, I'm as crazy as anybody. And I have a point here somewhere. Yeah.
Take your time.
If I meditate, let's say I take time out, like that's one of the things I'll do is that, well, I won't officially do that. It's not like a goal-oriented thing, but okay, what's going on? Just stop. And what is experienced is this momentum of the daydream or of interpretation. There's an actual feeling of, this is a very sensorial, very somatic feeling of momentum of the daydream. And it's easy to get caught back up in the stream and add content to it. Now, I don't want to create a dichotomy between one being good and the other one being bad, because that will suck. It just makes more of the same. Struggle. But there's a marked difference between lucid and not being lucid.
Right. Well, there's certain. See, that's very telling, because this shows right where you are in your yoga. So you're actually very far along. The next step, which is also the final step, is when you see that being caught in the daydream and being lucid are actually the same state. So you can seem to go in and out of being caught in the daydream to profound degrees, and nothing's actually happening, nothing's actually changing, and the very nature of what this is to move in and out of that. So when you notice this sort of a random sporadic cycle, it's a normalcy, and it never actually, the wholeness is not lost when you seem lost in partiality. Being seemingly lost in partiality is one of the dominant modes of the wholeness. And when you discover that, that's what liberation, that's what realization consists of. That's the final stage of the yoga. At that point, there's nothing is different than anything else, and anything includes its opposite.
It seemed, I think there's a part of the daydream of seeing that is that that's a place. It's actually, I guess, outside of it.
Right.
and it's not really.
Right, exactly.
Because it's like, one day I will get there, it's like putting my foot in the door and I can see that.
Right.
I can always see whenever I'm caught something, oh,
Right.
I'm not caught.
See, at this point, what you're doing is you still have an implicit value system of not being caught as superior to being caught.
It feels a lot better.
Right, yeah, but when you, but what the practice now I recommend is watch yourself drifting in and out and getting caught, and then finding yourself out of it again and seeing. And just watch how that cycle goes, and watch how over time, as you go through this cycle various times, you notice, but has anything really been gained? Has anything really been lost? Is anything really different? And then you discover the way those two modes are actually just different versions of the same mode. But this is very good. This is really the finish line. I mean, that's the last step right there. And you're seeing it, so that's great. So that apparent dichotomy is not an actual dichotomy. And the way to discover that is to just let it do its thing. Be with it over and over. Get lost and see again over and over and over. And after a while, it's like, well, am I lost or am I seeing? I can't remember which is which. I lost score, you know?
Well, I have to admit, if this is not, it's called talk about cheating. On mushrooms, the dichotomy.
Druggy.
Yeah, besides that, no. The dichotomy is the same. I mean, there isn't one. I mean, it's either or, it's like you say, both and. It really is tricky. There's absolute continuity, absolute discontinuity, and it's not oscillating. It's boom. And in normal waking life, it feels like an oscillation. So
yeah,
I know it's possible that both and.
Just be with it. And don't aspire to it. Don't try to create a both and. Just relax and watch yourself move in and out of this, and watch. And after a while, over time, you just begin to notice, it's the same thing. It's really the same thing. And then you begin to notice waking and sleeping. It's the same thing. Dreaming. It's the same thing. And so all of these different modes seem to present, but they're just different flavors of the same thing. My definition of radiant presence is, it appears like anything, but it never departs from itself. And that's really very concise. And coming to see that it never departs from itself, and that all of the way that it can appear like anything is that never departing from itself. And you begin to see that all these different modes, all these different states, all these different conditions, and drifting in and out of that, and in and out of sleep, and in and out of dreams, and in and out of delusion, in and out of lucidity. But you're not really going anywhere. Here you are. Oh, I'm deluded now. I'm seeing now. I'm awake now. I'm asleep now. I'm dreaming now. It's like, but here I am. What's changed? What's changing? Nothing's changing, because this continually presents as infinite change, and yet it never departs from itself one iota. It continuously presents as unending event, and yet nothing ever happens. It's the weirdest thing, and just to get it through on the sort of the last straw of getting this inconceivable paradox is actually what unity looks like. Is actually what absolute inclusion looks like. And the human mind it's wait a minute. Different. You're saying the difference is sameness. Difference is sameness. Like tilt. And yeah, you gotta, in a way, you kind of have to go crazy to see this, because what this is crazy. And when you see that craziness and you go crazy, then you see that everything that you ever thought was non-crazy is completely crazy. And this crazy that you find is what sanity looks like. And we ward it off with all, I have to make sense. I have to know who I am. I have to be able to turn out, I have to pretend I have it together. And when you just let go of all of that, you see how crazy all that really is. And this unending paradox, this unending super weirdness is actually sanity, is actually what clarity looks like. You have to really wade through that a bunch of times for it to really sink in.
It's when I'm dreaming, it's extremely non-linear. All the events just kind of seamlessly flow together, violating the laws of physics through time and space. When I wake up, it's all very rigid and linear.
Right.
But if it's all the same, how do you break down that rigidity?
By looking more closely. If you don't look very closely, things can seem to be linear and rigid. Well, we're sitting here talking. We've been sitting here talking for a few hours. It's pretty much the same thing. Nothing much has changed. So it's all very stable. But then, when you look more precisely at your experience, moment by moment, you notice that. You're thinking of this. You remember that. You get distracted by this. If you look very, very closely at the details of your experience, of your actual sensations, you'll notice an absolute dynamism, and you'll notice that nothing ever repeats. So, what you see in one instant, you will never see again. You've never seen it before. Just like in a dream, right? And so there's an absolute non-linearity, an absolute disconnectedness and uniqueness about your experience in every instant that is totally disconnected from every other instant. But in the waking state, there seems to be this dominant narrative ability that the conscious mind has to describe what's happening, and that description, which is very heavy-handed and uses a lot of averaging, doesn't address the details. And the description holds true over time, even though the actual details of experience, if you look very precisely at what's actually happening, you notice this amazing flashing and dynamism and non-repetitiveness. But again, if you let yourself sort of lazily relax into the description as well, we're just sitting here having a talk, and we've been sitting here talking for a while, and we'll be talking for a while more, and nothing's really changed much. That description is not untrue, but it leaves out so much of what you actually experience. Nowhere in that description is to talk about your eyes lighting on that particular shade of blue from time to time. Nowhere in that description is to talk about you're remembering something that happened with your parents in the back of your memory from time to time. So if you look at the precise details of experience, there's this amazing instantaneous and incredibly rapid morphing as the attention bounces around and dances around different apparent details of what seems to sort of come to the forefront.
So is it that commentary is off when we're asleep?
Yeah. It seems like the conscious mind is less dominant and the commentary is less dominant. So these non-linear modes come more obviously to the front. But sometimes they don't. I don't know if you're aware of it, because it can be difficult to be aware of it, because again, recalling one's dreams can be difficult to do it accurately. But it's possible to have a dream that's very, very precise and detailed and linear, and you're walking along a hall and you go to a door and you open the door and you're seeing all the dust on the door and you're seeing all the little threads in the rug, and you step in. It's possible to have a dream that is every bit as precise and seemingly coherent as your experience may be in this moment. Not that it always is, but it's possible to have that. And likewise, it's possible when you're awake to be in a very spacey state. And you might say, "Oh God, I just got distracted. Where was I just then?" And in actuality, you're like, "Woo, you're just off and gone." But we don't acknowledge it, because when you pull back, it's like, "No, I'm just sitting here having a conversation with this guy, and I was, my attention wandered off for a moment." But again, because we're in the waking mode, we have this such heavy-handed narrative ability that we tend to adhere to, because it's our social norm. We're all supposed to be on the same page. In actuality, we're all on wildly different pages. Yeah. We're all supposed to pretend, no, we're all here for a satsang, and we're all having a talk. What each of you think you're here for is entirely different. And yet the words you might use to describe it would seem to be the same words. So the narrative creates a commonality, creates an agreement where the specifics would diverge drastically. We're all here. We're all just sitting here and indulging in this talk. Okay, that's true. But if you look at what each person's individual experience is moment to moment, it's just all over the place.
So the narrative is here so we can just seem to communicate?
Well, that's one of its effects. But whether or not, you can't really speculate as to its purpose. All you can say is that's a mode that seems to be present. But even when it's present, it's not actually dominant, even when it pretends to be dominant. Because its mode is censorship, its mode is denial. It denies the incredible density of your actual moment-to-moment experience in favor of a sort of a stick figure overview description of what's happening. Whereas if you look at your actual experience from moment to moment, attention dances around, it wanders. You think of this and you notice that, and you feel this and there's an itch, and then you remember, it reminds you of something, and and it can require some sort of sensitivity training to notice that, because typically, again, in the waking state, we can be very used to being in these linear modes, in these sort of consensus reality modes of having it together and being engaged and playing the game. But the reality of our experience is very different. And so sort of dropping into that and acknowledging that can require some training if it does.
There's a phrase I translated, seeing the sameness of everything is liberation. But that's not the phrase I'm thinking, and I'm kind of trying to relate it to what we're talking about this. What I've been thinking of lately is, in a couple of Gitas, there's a statement, something like, when you know that everything that takes form is false, you will not be born again. So that's, I'm thinking there's a profundity to that it's sort of like, that's not life denying, that's not various objections that could be raised to that. And there are semantic problems, but that it's a seeing of the sameness, and that's liberating. And so when they say this phrase like that in the Gita, they're referring to that. But I put that out there, but it's like.
So what does that mean to you when you say things are what's
everything that takes form is false when you know,
right.
When you profoundly intuit,
right.
realize what have you,
right.
that everything that takes form is false, you will
right.
not be born again.
Right.
It's
so what does that mean to you
mean?
Personally?
It means well, yeah.
I mean, in your experience.
Well, what comes into form and goes out of form is transient, and therefore it cannot partake by that token. It can't partake of the reality of that which is changeless.
Right.
So therefore, it's relatively unreal.
Right.
I mean, it's Shakti from Shiva or
what
have you, but it can be important to regard it with this sameness, this one taste, or the sameness. And a certain unrealness about it, quote, false, and then contrary, and by virtue of that insight, then it becomes clear that there's this ground of being, this changeless reality that is the real that I'm now tuning into.
Right. A mode of that which is perhaps more powerful and more immediately relevant and less abstract is that things that seem to appear are not actually coherent, so they can't be resolved into being things. In other words, I can say, oh, I'm seeing you, and so you're a thing that's appearing. But if I look closely at what I mean by I'm seeing you, there's a presence of all sorts of a chaotic presentation of all sorts of colors and shapes, and it doesn't really resolve into any stability or any coherence. So the notion that there's a you that is there that I'm seeing that is actually coherent doesn't stand up experientially, because experience is very sensory experience, and any and all experience is intrinsically incoherent. In other words, you can't resolve exactly what's being experienced. You can't say what it looks like. You can't say, because experience consists of essentially the presence of momentary flashes of qualities which are morphing and appearing differently in the next instant. And even in the instance that they appear, they have an implication of being a certain way, but you can't be sure that they are that way. So there's an intrinsic unresolvability of what is experienced that we gloss over. We typically say, oh, I'm seeing you and you're there and you look like you and you look exactly like you and you still look like you. You look like you when I started talking to you and you still look like you. But that's all of a gross oversimplification of the actuality, where as I look at you, I notice different things and my eyes settle on this and my eyes settle on that, and your face shifts a quarter inch and all of a sudden the light's all different. I'm seeing different lights in different height. And so you aren't a coherent whole. You're rather a very, very loose set of divergent experiences which don't come together into an actual thing. And all experience is like that. So we create coherent things by a process of censorship, of not noticing the extreme divergence of our actual experience of the supposed things over time and even in the instant. So, you look at, and this is an experiment that I recommend to people all the time. Look at your face in the mirror to see what you look like. Well, you look in the mirror every day, right? So you know what to expect. You look in your face and, yeah, there I am, looks like me. But it's like, okay, but what am I really seeing? What do I really look like? And if you take like 5 minutes, really 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and just gaze relaxedly into your face in the mirror to watch what you look like, after a while, you'll think someone dosed you with acid or something. Because you'll just notice that, Jesus Christ, there's so much information there, and it's just shifting and dancing, and that's what it looks like. You're not hallucinating that. That's actually what you're always seeing. But we typically don't notice we see it because the attention skips over things. When you're looking at something, you don't actually look at it. You look at this and that. When you're looking at someone's face, your eyes dances around and you see lots of little points instantly. And it's like taking a bunch of snapshots and then forming a composite out of it. And so it seems to come together with some coherence because you're not actually giving it time to be what it actually is. Whereas if you take someone's face and you actually look at it, or anything whatsoever, and I'm using the visual field of experience here as an example, but this applies to any experience whatsoever. When you are with what's actually present, as it actually is, as a whole, you notice this amazing dynamism, this amazing shifting that is non-repetitive. And so what is it you're seeing? You can't say what it is because it never resolves into a coherent it. It's always something, and then it's something else, and then it's something else, and then it's something else. So the things that we experience aren't actually stable things. The experience is continually morphing to a profound degree. This isn't just something that's philosophically arguable. It's really painfully obvious if you play with your do some sort of sensitivity training and play with how experience actually works and the way experiential field actually presents over time. You'll notice this amazing dynamism. And so nothing has a way that it is experientially. And the inference is, well, I'm looking at my face and every instant I'm seeing something different, but there's a fixed face there somewhere, and it's just an artifact of my seeing that I'm seeing it differently. But that's an abstract concept. The actuality of my face present in the mirror is an experience and no more. I don't know my face exists. The only thing I know exists is my experience of my face. Like right now, I have no experience of my face. I'm not experiencing my face as a visual object, for example. So it doesn't exist for me right now. No, it does exist. I'm just not seeing it because my eyes don't face back. That's an abstraction. That's a claim. It's easy to make that claim, but it's an abstraction. All you know for sure is the actuality of present experience, right? So things don't exist, experiences exist. And you can call it experiences of things. I can say, I'm having an experience of this computer, which implies that maybe the computer actually exists in a certain way, and my experience of it, which is very, very, I shift my head around and the computer completely changes shape. It changes size. No, but there's a real computer that's there that's not changing. It's changing because I'm, my perspective is changing. Well, that's a theory, But the theory is only findable in my mind. I can't find the theory except in my experience, just like I can't find the computer except in my experience. So the only reality of the computer I can find is my experience of it. Just like the only reality of the theory I can find is my experience of it. So experience, and it turns out to be the canon, the final line of what constitutes reality. You can't find anything other than experience. So the whole theory of things is just a theory. And if it exists at all, it exists in your experience, right? So even the theory of things isn't a thing unless you're making it a thing by positing it as one. So the only actuality is the experiential field, and it continually morphs, it continually slippery, it absolutely never repeats any configuration whatsoever precisely. Very strange. So where did the theory of this fixed, stable world and these fixed objective objects, which are just sitting out there not changing, come from? It's an idea that may exist in my mind, but it can't be found anywhere else. It doesn't exist in reality. It doesn't exist in my experiential field, and I bet anything it doesn't exist in your experiential field either.
Well, okay, so say like a year from now, you're back, and most of these people come back. That cabinet there with the glass, it'll still be there. If I were to hit it on the wood with a hammer and make a mark, if Helen didn't fix it, that mark would still be there.
Right. So you're supposing
something like that doesn't add up. I want to understand what you're saying, but I don't understand how that works with that.
It's one and the same. Look at it this way. I'm seeing this cabinet. Suppose I turn my head away, I'm not seeing the cabinet. Now I turn my head back, now I'm seeing the same cabinet, right? Wrong. Yeah, you saw it then, but what you saw then, you'll never see again exactly the same way. You have a theory that it's the same, but your experience doesn't support that theory, because your experience, next time you see it, will be slightly different. Maybe arguably very slightly, but very slightly different is a euphemism for entirely different, right? In other words, so I'm seeing it now, and I shift my head a 1/16 of an inch, and I'm seeing it now. Well, it's almost the same, but almost the same is a euphemism for completely different. It's only in horseshoes. So I can have a theory that, no, but there's a cabinet that's there that's one way, that's the same, and my experience of it keeps shifting. But how can I know that is true? Because the only way I can verify that is with my experience. So the only thing I have to measure it, whether or not it exists with, is my experience of it, which is constantly shifting. And okay, there seems to be persistence over time. You hit it with a hammer and it puts a mark in it, and the mark seems to be there. You hit it, there's a mark, I turn my head away, I look back, the mark's still there, right? But the mark still there is a euphemism for a completely different experience. Because I may experience what I describe as being a mark, and I may experience it as being there, but my experience of it the next time is different than my experience of it the first time. It may be similar, but again, similar is a euphemism for different.
Okay, so what I perceive as semantic differences in the way I perceive that, to you, maybe because you see from somewhere back here,
You have never seen that cabinet the same way twice. You can sit in this room and stare at that cabinet, and you'll have a unique experience every instant that will never repeat. So what's the cabinet look like? Which one of those?
Wood, glass, looks inside.
Well, wood and glass is an abstraction. Wood looks like wood when it's over there. If I take this cabinet and hit you on the head, what's the wood look like? Yeah, maybe. Right. So is the wood stars, or is it wood over there?
The stars somewhere in my head, but you would still see the wood.
You say that, but how can you know what he's seeing? You don't even know if he exists. You don't know. You don't know that he's. You might be having a dream right now, and you might dream that he's here, and you wake up and he's not there, and you know you were dreaming, so you know he was never there as far as you can tell. Maybe when you dream, everyone that shows up in your dream actually exists somehow, and maybe when you dream, you travel to some other world that it actually is like that, and you're actually there. And so you're with actual things in an actual environment with actual beings, right? Maybe. And then you wake up and you leave that world and you're not there, right? So all of that analysis, all of that hypothesis exists as a hypothesis in my mind, right? But the dream is an actuality, an experiential actuality. Maybe it's another world. I can't verify whether or not it is. Maybe it's just a dream and I'm creating it. I can't. That's also a hypothesis in my mind, which I can't verify, since the only way I can verify it is by going to experience, and experience only verifies experience. That's the point. The theory of objectivity is based on experience. Look at it this way. You were born, let's suppose, and you were born, and at one point you were like a week old. And did you know there was an objective world when you were a week old? Do you suppose? Do you know you had a body? It was just the presence of an experiential field. It was just completely weird and completely obvious. And
what's the word you said? Recall? What?
Did you know you had
A week old.
a week old? Sorry, yeah, or whatever. I mean, just when you were very, very young, you know, the only thing you knew was an experiential field existed. Right? When you were in the womb, there's the presence of an experiential field. You didn't even know your mother existed. You didn't know you existed. There's just this experiential field. Then the experience of being born, you didn't know you were being born. It was just this weird presence of weird experiences, weird sensations, right? And then you're born, and all of a sudden you're in the delivery room being spanked or whatever, and there's these bright lights in your face. You don't know they're lights. You don't know it's a delivery room. It's just an experiential presence, right? And then later on, you learned, oh, no, this isn't a delivery room. These are lights. This is your mother. You were born. And then, which are abstractions. Because all you still know is the presence of your experiential field, but you've been indoctrinated into believing that these abstractions are actually true, even though you can't verify it.
That's why early childhood memories are so, the experiences are so abstract because we don't have the experience.
Right. It's actually, you see, you say they're abstract, but it's the opposite. They're actually concrete. The abstraction is the analysis of putting it together. The abstraction is being able to describe it. A description is an abstraction of experience. Experience is concrete presence and is undescribable. So your visual field right now is concrete. As soon as you describe it, you create an abstraction, right? I say, so here's the presence of my visual field, and I say, oh, I'm seeing a room with people sitting in chairs. Those are abstractions that I'm pretending, that I'm claiming, maybe, applies to the visual field. But because it's an abstraction, it's a simplification, and it's also a very heavy-handed censorship, because it omits everything else that's present in the experiential field. It doesn't talk about that particular red flower, or the red flower next to it, or the red flower next to it, or that particular number on the clock, or that. I didn't mention those, and they're present too. But as soon as I talk about them, they become a thing, but they aren't a thing. All they are is an aspect of this field that is the concrete presence. And as soon as I start specifying supposed specific objects, I'm abstracting them into existence. I'm arguing. It's like a politician talking about peace in our time. You know, it's total bullcrap. Peace in our time is a pure abstraction. You know, what's peace in our time look like? It looks like this. If you go over to Afghanistan, what's peace in our time look like? It looks like people shooting at each other or whatever, right? It's like, so it's like we're talking about the difference between the picture and the caption. Okay, the picture is what it is. You don't know what it is. It's just a picture. It's shapes, and then the caption, all of a sudden, it's this or it's that, you know. And you can take any picture and put any caption under it, and it in terms of abstraction, it changes the flavor of what the picture supposedly depicts, which is all an abstraction because the picture isn't, of course, actually changed, right? And so that's what the relationship that we're looking at between. Huh?
You said it does all the time.
Right. In terms of the words, we're using abstractions, but the use of abstractions doesn't actually create an actuality.
But didn't what you just said, doesn't that acknowledge that there is a solid object, but the caption can change our interpretation?
No, it may imply that, but it doesn't. There's no solid object. What solid object? What picture? What caption? I was spinning. It was a magic spell. I was spinning fantasies. But the fantasies existed as thoughts in my mind, and I suppose in your mind, to whatever degree they did, and so on and so forth, in the context of, and thoughts are actual experiential presence, just like vision is actual experiential presence. And the thoughts claim to be about pictures and captions and this and that, which is all abstractions. But when you look at what's present, is the thought of a picture, or is it just some weird energy presence? You know, is the sight of a clock, or is it just some weird pattern of light? And what is light? Calling light, does it make it into light? What is light? You know, giving light to caption, oh, this is light. You're like,
It's a term.
yeah, it's a term.
So terms and rules and basics are tools that we use to steer ourselves into the understanding.
Into the supposed understanding. Into the created partial understanding of that which is utterly beyond being abstracted. The caption can never capture, the pictures are always worth 1,000 words, because the caption can never capture what's in the picture. Picture's too information dense. Likewise, our description of experience can never capture the experience. In one instant, you're experiencing such an information density, it's inconceivable. You could spend the rest of your life cataloging what you experience in one instant and you wouldn't even scratch the surface.
I think it's a constant change is changelessness, sort of the paradox, constant change. Sure. But once you get down to labeling the change, you know, Shiva Shakti, when you get down to labeling, you know, the constant change as objects, that's where you're off really. So,
yeah. And constant change is changelessness, but what is changeless is constant change. It goes both ways. You don't ever lose the change, you don't ever lose the constant change. That is what's changeless. So the constant change and changelessness turn out to be two ways of describing the same thing. Just like Shiva and Shakti turn out to be two ways of describing the same thing. So why bother, since it's the same thing, why bother using two words? Okay, I'm dizzy. If you're not dizzy, I haven't been working hard enough. Why don't we knock off for lunch? It's about 12:15-ish. Why don't we take like a good hour and a half? Take your time, go have some nice lunch somewhere, hang out, chat with friends, whatever. So we'll be back here. Let's shoot for being back here at about, so it's 12:15. We'll shoot for being back here about 1:45 in an hour and a half. And Luce, you know, just trail on in whenever you feel like, and we'll have some fun. And so we'll be back at this is California time, 12:15. We'll be back at about 1:45.